We move on now to the event, and we're talking about the Google I/O, or is it Google AI? It could actually be Palm Pilot too. So today we're doing that coverage. Wednesday, May the 10th, was when Google I/O, 2023 came through. And so today BAU is reflecting on that, and we'll have text from crew members, what they like about it, what they don't like about it. We know this was all AI focused, but yet in the mix of all of that, we have some three devices that Google surprised us with, and we'll be talking about some of those devices or all of those devices and see who is getting what and who's not getting what. John, let's start with you. What is it about Google AI or Google I/O that you like for this year? I know the focus, like I said, was mainly on AI, and it's never been this huge about AI. And I think Google is just trying to leapfrog over everyone else, when it comes to this AI. And I'm kind of glad, they brought it to the forefront.
Yeah, I personally wasn't. I'm more interested in the hardware, but I understand why they had to, with ChatGPT and everything, blowing up this year, they had to jump in and say, "Hey, but don't forget about us."
Exactly. And so the whole focus was on there. And like what Sundar Pichai was saying, and some of the guys there, I think the thing I took home with me is boldness and responsibility, because we all understand, what this AI could do and the consequences. And so it's a huge responsibility and it's a bold move, but yet in the same breath, that boldness needs to be guided by responsibility. And I think that's the bigger picture, because if we don't, bad actors could grab hold of these things and could turn everything onto its own head. For me, though, I think the part that I really like was that video transcription, or I mean, AI thing. Here I am, speaking in English and talking about, Google I/O, and they could have me saying that in German that I don't even know a single word in except Hingxing. When I'm on the airplane, what do you want to eat? I'm like Hingxing or whatever for chicken. I think that's all that I know. But here, I could be speaking absolute perfect German, and showing my facial expression, my lips movement, and all of that. I think that is just the crux of the matter. And to me, that's the part that actually fascinated me. What do you guys think about this part of that AI? Of course, it's being powered by that Palm 2 pilot, like I said, Palm 2. What do you guys think about that?
So Google, when the keynote just started and they just directly started talking about AI, I knew from that point on that this IO was AI focused, because the first topic of the keynote itself was AI. And I like hardware. I don't like AI much, although I use Chat GPT, but I'm more fascinated with the Pixel 7a, because that is the first budget Pixel device with wireless charging. So my one side is telling me to go for it, the other side is telling me to wait.
Yeah, I know you kind of like those devices, Austin, and yet in the same breath, this is a guy that keeps saying, I don't like Pixel. He likes to go with, Ed and talk about, Pixel is bad, blah, blah, blah. And talking about Ed, as you can see, we don't have both Ed and Fee in here today. They have some appointments and things like that. So those guys are not here with us. So Austin is going to be the Pixel basher, and yet in the same breath, he wants a Pixel and doesn't care
See,
too much about
I
AI.
want the Pixel. I want the Pixel because before complaining, you have to buy and try it. Otherwise, there is no point complaining. So I can buy it, try it, and then complain.
I see. I see.
That's respectable.
Yeah, I hear that. That's absolutely respectable. So let's talk about, now that we're talking about devices and all of that, let's talk about the other tools in the AI. Like I've said, the Palm 2 is the power behind it. That's the backbone for it, all of the various tasks and, things like math, coding, reasoning, multilingual translation, natural language, and all of that. The Palm 2 is the powerhouse behind that. And that Palm 2 is trained on multilingual texts from over 100 languages. And that's huge. That's giving it an edge, over the other ones in understanding things like idioms and phrases in different languages and all of that, which makes it really huge because these are areas that sometimes we got, false results in and all of that. This is a very important development as these other AI models often, generate fake information that I said, that, may sound like truth, but it's not. So I think we're glad to see this coming through. And in addition, Google has other modifications of the system, intended at doing different things, such as the version known as, the Med Palm 2, which basically is trained on health data to answer questions similar to those that you will find in medical exams. And, they also have that expert mode that is also is called the Sec 2, and that's at an expert level. So that's something that's based on the US model of medicine and all of that. So I'm glad to see that. The Sec 2 Palm 2 is that version intended to help detect threats in code and explain the behavior of potential, malicious scripts and things like that. Because like we said, when we're doing AI, people can generate anything that they wanted to. And so it's a huge responsibility. And Google is kind of keeping that, in mind. And Google continued to say that it's already using Palm 2 to power 25 features and products, which include its experimental, chatbot, Bard. Of course, we all know about Bard, and we're talking about Bard, and now in like 180 countries. Unfortunately, the EU and Canada are not going to be seeing Bard for the time being until, I guess, some regulatory things get settled or whatever. Those of you in Canada and the EU are not going to be seeing the Bard in your area yet. So that's one thing to think about. And the Google workspace apps like Docs, Slides and Sheets, all of those are going to be powered by that, Palm 2. So talking about phones, in order for phones to take advantage of these powerful AI ventures, Google has in place a light version of Palm 2 known as the Lizard, something I call the Lizard, and that's, the Gecko, which is capable of processing 20 tokens per second. And I think that's really nice to see that. As powerful as the Palm 2 language model is, though, Google is already hard at work on its successor called Gemini. So, you guys remember Project Gemini when those guys were trying to go to the moon. So Google now has the successor of Palm 2 already. They're working on it, which is called Gemini, which is supposed to be more efficient and multimodal. So looks like Google is all in on this AI thing, guys. What do you guys think?
I actually kind of like it because much like every other platform, there's always competition. And right now we've really seen ChatGPT kind of taking over, but having Google coming into this space now, you may actually start seeing a little bit more competition and development of the AI platforms, which will only better not only our utilization of them, but also will assist in the regulations around what we're using AI for and how we're using it within our technology.
Now, in terms of accessibility, there was some accessibility. It wasn't in the keynote, and kind of always bothers me. Why don't we have accessibility in the keynote, but rather is more like a developer thing? Of course, I know this is all developer stuff, but I would love to hear a mention of accessibility now and then in the main keynote. You guys remember back in Oreo when we had that accessibility featured, front and center. Then, when Oreo came in and the ability to start TalkBack with those two volume keys being held down. I like that. And we haven't seen anything like it to where, accessibility was part of that keynote. But anyway, we do have some accessibility thing, and we'll put that URL here in the show notes. There was Nimmer talking about Braille support, which is getting better in Android, not Android, in TalkBack 14, which is yet to come. And it wasn't in the beta 2, but it's going to be coming sometime. And the Braille support there, most especially those that like to use a virtual keyboard, virtual Braille keyboard, it's getting more useful because you can do things like selecting and cutting and copying and things like that. Something that version 13.1 at the moment does not have. And so to see that come through, I think that's a good treat for our Braille users and people who like to use Braille virtual keyboard. John, you like using that Braille virtual keyboard. Is this some good news? Some nice ringing thing to the ear that we will be looking forward to?
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I mean, I almost sometimes don't use the Braille keyboard because I'm constantly switching out of it just to do things like change granularity. So it'll be nice to be able to just do it from within the keyboard. Like if I need to edit, I need to back out of it, move my cursor, select the text and all that manually. So to be able to just stay in the keyboard and do all this is going to be awesome. I'll use the keyboard a lot more now.
Yeah, so absolutely kudos to those developers for doing that. And besides that, there was another lady, I think her name is Charlene, talk about some of the new things that are happening, for those that are hard of hearing or the deaf. And so I'm glad Google is also taking care of that. And then there was another lady, Karen, who is like the developer, the UI, most especially making accessibility understandable for developers out there. And so if you're a developer, this is something to look into because you'll have those tools out there to support your work, making things easier for you to know how to code with accessibility in mind. And it was really nice to see these three guys come on and talk about accessibility, which is very important to us. And that's some of the things that I really like about it.
Yeah, and just a couple examples of the developer related things. It's like being able to customize focus order, like where you want the focus to go when somebody's swiping through items, and you can customize like how often you want TalkBack to announce a change, like if it's on a timer or something. So this is all stuff that developers can now tie into. And I encourage any developers that are listening to this, or if you know developers, like take advantage of this stuff, because if the developers don't take advantage of it, it's not gonna help us. So it's good. I'm glad Google's adding these features, but I'm also hoping that the developers take advantage of it.
There is a problem related to accessibility. Yeah, all the improvements are good. The Braille additional support is good. And the developer things is really great. But there's something which is important, which is AI. They were talking about AI all over the place, but they didn't include it in things like Lookout or TalkBack. So like image descriptions. So you see, like Be My Eyes is using ChatGPT, and it's something great. Whereas Google is not trying to do that in Lookout. But you should expect that Google is going to do such thing, but at the same time you feel like no, Google is not doing anything related to AI in this way. So I think this is a problem. and they are just focusing on AI in stuff which is mainstream, not in things related to accessibility.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think Google has fallen behind when it comes to accessibility in this area. Like on an iPhone, you do have image description. So I'm hoping Google, obviously, they've proven, I mean, they had a whole section on this type of thing, that they can do this stuff with AI. So I guess we can only hope, keep our fingers crossed that at some point they'll use this, in that way with TalkBack and Lookout and that type of thing.
Yeah, but
You
even
know,
without AI, currently the image description in Lookout is something like it's really behind, even currently. Whereas iPhone, they are not using any AI, right? Are they using any artificial intelligence? No, they are not doing that with the image description. But you get something really surprisingly good. I feel jealous whenever I see it with someone.
That's why you need From My Eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know what I mean, girl.
Yeah.
But I do understand your point, and I understand your pain. But then, Google has a way of surprising when you think they're not doing something, and then you wake up in the morning and boom, something comes through. So I think that this summer is going to be definitive as to what we can see and what we may not see. So I will still keep my fingers crossed yet to see what happens between now and the final release of Android 14. I'm almost positive that we may see some good stuff coming through, but we'll see what happens. But if Google were to take advantage of AI for us in accessibility, no one can touch them. You can't even touch this because, Google is the king of data. And frankly, if they utilize their AI, we'll have the best of every thing, most especially when we're talking about accessibility. So I do understand what you are saying, Karen, and most especially with Lookout could be made better, and we'll see what happens between now and then, and
yeah,
we'll see.
that's where I kind of agree with both you, Warren, and Kareen about the AI and Lookout, especially. Like, I look at something like Apple, and the one thing I have to say that they do right is when they implement something, they do it good and they do it right before they actually release it. I'm actually wondering if Google is taking maybe that same kind of step from Apple's playbook with introducing AI into things like TalkBack, Lookout, other similar applications. I'm wondering if they're maybe slowly or staggering their launch of AI usage within those apps, specifically because I want to make sure it works and works correctly. Because obviously, if you implement AI into Lookout and it's not functioning as expected, it can give some pretty bad results. So I'm wondering if maybe they're not doing a lot of internal testing prior to actually announcing them embedding the AI platforms into their various applications other than their work suite.
I agree with you, Cam, because if you look at what we have, for example, in TalkBack 13.1, the image text description, it's not really what people were expecting. People were thinking that they were going to be getting like real image description and all of that. So I am thinking that these guys are rethinking these things, and it would make sense to do it better. Like you said, the other guys on the other aisle, when they bring something, is something that works. So they kind of work on it and make sure that by the time you push it out there to the people, that it actually works. So I think if Google is taking this approach and then working on it to making sure that this thing works as intended before rolling it out there, I think that's a better approach than, pushing something to us that doesn't do what it's intended for.
Exactly.
Okay, let's talk about phones, because I know Austin likes the phones, and we got 3 phones, right? So we're starting with the Pixel 7a and its availability. So the Pixel 7a phones will be available in the following countries. We got the US, Canada, UK, Ireland, Germany, France, Spain, Italy, Norway, Netherlands, Denmark, we got Sweden, we got Japan, we got Australia, Singapore, Taiwan, and India. Those are the countries that the 7A would be available in. And if you're looking into that, maybe if you're not in one of these countries, probably the best place may be to get it on Amazon. But, I don't know how that's going to work out. Just like those of us who live here in the States, we want some certain phones that we don't have in our region, but you try to get it on Amazon, and that's the place to go get them.
I was actually surprised with the 7A in a couple of ways. The price of it, because it went up a little bit, and the specs of it, because it's so close now to what the actual Pixel 7 is. It has the same amount of RAM. It has the same it has the same processor. It's got wireless charging now. I think the cameras are not as good, so that's one differentiator. And I guess the selling point for some might be that it's got a smaller screen. So, because some people like small phones still. So, I think it's a 6.1 inch screen, and the Pixel 7 is a 6.4 inch screen. So, it's a little smaller. But I feel like it's a little bit like stepping on the toes of the Pixel 7 because it's only $100 cheaper. And, the Pixel 7 goes on sale a lot for $500 itself. So I'm a little curious about what Google was thinking here.
Sometimes actually I've seen the Pixel 7, fell down to as low as $450. So this is truly, a real bad thing. Well, yeah, let me say it's a bad thing price-wise because, yes, it's the first one to have wireless charging and all of that, and faster charging than the other A series phones from Google. However, the price is $500, and then the Pixel 7 is $600, and goes on sale regularly and falling down to the same price or even below that $500. What would you do? Would you take the 7 or the 7A? That's a very tough proposal, and I probably I would be taking the 7. But then in the same breath, there's something that was brought to the 7A that is not found in any of the Pixel phones, and that's the adaptive vibration. When you go to sounds and vibrations and all of that, you can customize, vibrations to where it adapts to where you are at, and that is only on the 7A. So, and I'm sure it's going to trickle down to all the other Pixel series, especially the 7 and 6 series. But that's the one thing that sets it apart from the rest of the pack. Let's talk about the Pixel Fold and, the trade-ins. So we got the Pixel Fold, and I think Google really did some good homework here because when you fold the phone, it's not quite 6 inches, right? It's like 5.8 inch or something like that. Do you remember how tall it is, John? Yeah, I think it's 5.8 inches.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Maybe 5.7, but
yeah, somewhere in there. So, if you're looking for a small phone, finally, this may be it. But if you're like me, frankly, I don't think I'm not at a place where I would like to be using the Fold. I see the Fold as a productivity tool in a different way, and it's not for everyone, and especially I know it's not for me, and so I wouldn't be jumping on it, and most especially at $1,800. But still I'm getting it, so we'll see if we unbox it for our podcast and see if it goes into my museum and things like that. But the trade in Google, I don't know. The trade-in was not very good
Yeah.
for all the devices. John.
Don't get me started on that.
You want to
oh
talk
my-
about
Yeah,
trade-ins,
I
and
will. So
I will give a rundown of the
I'm-
trade-ins.
I'm gonna be honest, it hurt my feelings. I went
I
to
know.
trade in my Pixel 7 Pro, and they offered me $380 for it, right? But here's the kicker. When I said I would like to trade in an iPhone 14 Pro Max, they said, okay, we'll give you $950 for that phone. So I understand why they're doing it. They want people to convert. They want iPhone users to switch over. But at the same time, it's like they're disrespecting their own Pixels a little bit. I think like they're gonna give me what's the Pixel 7 Pro is a $900 phone, and they're gonna give me $380 for it, and then the iPhone 14 Pro Max is an $1,100 phone, and they're gonna give $950 for it. Like that's a huge disparity.
That also really shows what Google values their devices at and how much they have determined their devices depreciate over a very short period of time.
Yeah, so here's a rundown. These are, the $900 trade-ins, include the following phones, iPhone 14 Pro Max, iPhone 14 Pro, iPhone 13 Pro Max, or Galaxy Z Fold 4. Those will fetch you that $900 trade-in. The iPhone 13 Pro fetches you $850, and the Z Fold 3 comes in at $800. So if you have an older, not the Z Fold 4, but you have the Z Fold 3, that will fetch you $800. Then moving along that, you got the Galaxy S22 Ultra that fetches you $750, while the Galaxy Z Fold 2 fetches you $725. From here, the following devices will get you the following trade-ins. We got the Galaxy Z Flip 4 fetching you $700. Galaxy S21 Ultra goes for $650. Galaxy Fold grabs you $625. Galaxy Z Flip 3 will garner you $600. Pixel 7a bites off. I don't know why they put Pixel 7a in here. Who has a Pixel 7a and want to, send it in for
That's funny.
the Fold that is not yet. The 7a is not
If
even
you have
yet
a
in
7A
hand.
and you don't want it right now, just return it. Get your full money. Don't
Exactly.
trade it in.
But if you trade it in for the Fold, it would bite off $500. The Pixel 7 Pro, like John says, fetches you $380, and it doesn't say whether it's 256 or 512. So, for example, I have the 512. And do you think I want to give that phone for $380? I'll be absolutely
Heck no.
insane to do that. iPhone 14 grabs you $350. Pixel 7 settles in for $295. iPhone 13 will take home some $230. Pixel 6 Pro will take you some $216.50. And last but not the least, the Pixel 6 will only give you an okay $150.40. Just imagine that. I might as well sell it on eBay, right?
Yeah, exactly. They're definitely not. They're like I said earlier. They're trying to get conversions. Like if you're trading in a Galaxy or you're trading in an iPhone, they're going to give you very good value for it. Like basically what you could sell it for yourself, if not more. In fact, for the Fold 4, they're offering $900. When I traded in my Fold 4 to Samsung to get my S23 Ultra, they only gave me $750 for it. So Google's actually offering more for Samsung's devices than Samsung itself is offering.
So I say that Samsung's actually bad this year with trade-ins. We talked about this in one of our episodes, maybe like a couple of weeks or so ago. So I think they both are doing very bad this year. And just imagine your Fold and Samsung wanted to give you that little amount that they wanted to give you for the S23 Ultra. I think that is not good.
Yeah, and
That's
while we're
what.
talking about trade-ins, I just want to mention that the way Google does it is a little different from Samsung's version. You will have to pay the full price up front. So if you have a credit card, you're gonna have to put the whole price on the credit card, and then when Google receives your trade-in device, they'll give you a partial refund for the amount they quoted you. So it's different from how Samsung does it. Samsung will actually, you'll only have to pay the quoted amount, and then if you don't send it in, they'll charge your credit card a second time. So it works differently.
I like that better because then, if your device comes in and it's not in the shape that you said it was, then of course they're going to deduct from it. And I like that better than the way that Google is doing it. So let's talk about the some of the specs of this Pixel Fold. And of course, we know that it's fueled or powered by that G2 Tensor G2. And then it comes with 12 gigs of RAM and 256 or 512 gigs of storage. I wanted the 512 when I put mine in, but I wanted it in porcelain, and that only has 256. I didn't want another black one, so I went for the 256. The 512 would be 1919, and this that's $1,919, basically 1920, as to the 256, which is 1800. That's 1799. So when unfolded, you have that 7.6-inch main display and 5.8-inch, as we said, when it's folded. Both screens, whether folded or unfolded, have that 120 hertz display. For charging, it has at least 21 watt and wire charging, and it supports wireless charging as well. So that is a good thing to see. But I don't know. This Fold is just, I think the price is so expensive, and if I were Google, I should have started that thing at 1,300, not 1,700. You want to undercut the competition, like what they did with the Pixel 6 series and Pixel 7 series and all of that. You're looking at Samsung, you want to bring yours in a little bit lower, not starting it off at the same price with Samsung. Samsung, this is their fourth iteration, and this is your first, and you're starting it at the same price. I think it was a little bit too ambitious, in my never to be humble opinion.
Yeah, that's true. They should have started it a little bit lower. If all goes well though, and they don't have the hardware issues that sometimes, let's be honest, sometimes creep up with Pixel phones. I think on paper, maybe not by processor, but the cameras, the aspect ratios of the screens, I think a lot of things about this phone are better than the Fold. The Fold has been known to have like mediocre cameras compared to the flagships, whereas this basically almost has the same types of camera sensors as like the Pixel 7 Pro. I think they're a little bit different. The sensor might actually be smaller, even though it's the same amount of megapixels, but it's still much better cameras than what's on the Galaxy Fold devices.
They absolutely got it right, and probably that's the best camera you can find on any foldable. So yeah, I think they did their homework here. It just kind of bothers me though that they kind of made it so expensive. But we'll see how this all comes out. And knowing Google, they may decide to kind of cut down the price, and then early adapters like ourselves, will be looking back and said, hey, should I have waited? But now I'm not going to regret it. It's okay. The $200-$300 more is not going to kill me,
Yeah. They also did mention that it has the largest battery in a foldable phone. which that's something that concerns me. I mean, it is technically larger, but the battery in this is smaller than the battery in the Pixel 7 Pro. And it's going to need to power a much larger screen, assuming you use it open most of the time. I guess if you used it closed, the battery life would be pretty good compared. It'd probably be about the same as the Pixel 7 Pro, I would think.
That was actually kind of my concern when I did some reading on it, is seeing that it's the same size battery, but it's as in the 7 Pro, but you're basically handling double the screen. We know from Samsung that the smaller batteries or equal batteries and double size don't work. So I'm wondering if we maybe have better power management occurring within the Fold, or if we're just going to simply see a lot less screen time.
Yeah, only time will tell. So I'll be honest, the battery life on the Galaxy Fold 4 that I had wasn't great. I just got used to the fact that I was gonna have to charge it at some point during the day, so I just made it my routine, like while I'm eating lunch, charge it for like 10 minutes, and then it'd be back up to like 90% or something. So I think it's just a compromise at this point for all foldable devices that you're gonna have to deal with. Obviously, it's different depending on. I think the battery life for blind users, especially if they're completely blind, might not be a big deal because they'll have the screen hidden with the brightness turned down anyway. But I think for low vision users who usually, for the most part, use screen brightness pretty high, it's going to really affect the battery life.
Yeah, and that's actually my exact issue with even looking at a Fold, whether Google's or Samsung's, because my screen brightness is always at 100%. Everything that would drain that battery fairly quickly, I'm utilizing. So
yeah, same here.
For me, like, I want to go the route of a Fold because I like having the option of the bigger screen, but I'm also sitting there going, do I really want to sacrifice only charging my phone, once a day? Do I want to sacrifice that and maybe start having to deal with charging it back to like once, twice throughout the day? It's one of those things that, only the individual really knows what they need. So that's going to be something you're going to have to think about, is do you have the time or the ability to be charging your device partway through the day?
I think that until we have like a better battery technology, the Folds will always have problem with battery. But I think that, like you said, though, Google's battery is a little bit more than what Samsung Z Fold has. So maybe we'll see when we have it in hand. And if they make the outer screen, when it's folded, work just like the regular phone would do, I think that will solve a lot of problems, John, like you mentioned. And for me, if I have it, frankly, I would not be using it unfolded. Most of the time, I'll just be using the just folded screen because, if it allow me access to everything on the phone, I may not be using the Fold unless I'm watching something or I'm presenting something or
multitasking is a good.
Or multitasking. Exactly.
Yeah, like it's nice having to, like, instead of having to split screen top and bottom, like to be able to have a split screen left and right with like a full size app on each side. That's actually
better.
One of my favorite things about having a folding device is to be able to do that.
That's right. That's my attraction, because I use split screen fairly frequently. So it's like having two full-size apps would make it so much easier to navigate than having, half the app on top and half an app on the bottom.
One thing that people were hoping for at Google I/O is for Google to announce that they were going to match Samsung when it comes to OS updates, and say they're going to start providing 4 updates for feature update, 4 years of feature updates, but they didn't announce that. So it's still 3 years of feature updates, 5 years of security updates, and that's a little bit disappointing, especially considering that we're almost at Android 14. So if you buy one of these devices they just announced, in 3 months from now, you're going to have used up one of your updates, and you're only going to have 2 more years of support for that. And I think that's really disappointing to a lot of people. So I think Google needs to step it up, at least match Samsung, if not just say, we'll support you for 5 years. Like, why not? You're Google. You have your own processor now. You've run out of excuses. Start supporting these devices longer. That's my opinion.
John, that's something that's always bothered me, most especially. You get a device in May and in August, and believe it or not, I think if they follow the footprints of Android 13, we'll have the full final release of Android 14 in August because it's the same timetable. And so I don't see any reason why we are not going to be seeing the final release of Android 14 in August. And so you get this phone in June or July, and then August you have the Android 14, and that's counting against you as having used one of your updates for a year. I think that is so wrong and could not be any more wrong than that. And I've always argued that, if you buy a phone, especially from Google, for example, and all of them in reality, and if it's just at the nose of the new OS iteration, that OS iteration that comes through shouldn't be counted as receiving one of the 3 years. I think that is so wrong. So I don't know what Google would do about this, but the whole thing, like you said, they should just bump it up to 4 years, because the complaint had always been, Qualcomm was the one with the drivers and all of that, and so it was hard to support that. And now you have your own, and you are giving me 3 years still. Come on.
Yeah, not only that, Samsung's using Qualcomm.
Yeah.
And they're doing it for 4 years. So that's excuse is not going to work anymore.
It doesn't work. And so Samsung is proving, hey, you know what? Even with Qualcomm, we are giving people 4. And Google, this is why I say Google is no longer the gatekeeper of Android. Is Samsung. Samsung is the gatekeeper of Android, because at least they're giving you those 4 years of OS update, and Google can't even touch that. It's just so shameful. Very shameful. Let's move on to Android 14 beta, though, because we can't leave that out of here, can we? Because on that same day, we also have the Android 14 beta 2 dropping in and finally fixing that problem that we have where the SIM card was causing a problem, and we have that com.android.qns has stopped working. That got fixed with this beta 2. And then there's something in there also that I want to mention here in passing in Android 14 beta 2. It's the fact that, how the location history, and Google has taken it a step farther, because, some apps will want to track your location, or, sell it to other, phone manufacturers, or or other companies and things like that. Google has kind of implemented something to where you could see those changes, and developers are forced to make that known. And so if you go to the system settings, if you have Android 14 running now, and you go to system settings and you go to privacy, and then you tap on privacy again. Let me grab my phone and show you what I'm talking about.
10:44 a.m. Lock screen. Device
Turn up the
finders.
volume
Find my
here.
device. Privacy. Permissions. Dashboard.
So here I am.
System.
I'm already in the privacy. So when you go to system settings and tab on privacy, and you're on this screen, then here is what I'm talking about.
Data sharing updates for location. Review apps that change the way they may share your location data. 9 of 17.
That's the one I'm talking about.
Data sharing updates for location. Back. Button. Out of list.
And here's what it says.
These apps have changed the way they may share your location data. They may not have shared it before, or may now share it for advertising or marketing purposes. No updates at this time. 1 of 2. In list. 2 items.
So in other words, if you have apps that have changed their data sharing or location data sharing, you'll find those apps here. In other words, if the developer changes things and did not tell you, Google tracks that and will show you those apps in here saying, hey, look, this app has changed its policy and now they're sharing your location with other, services. And so it's up to you to say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to keep this app. I'm going to get it out of here because they're violating my privacy. They're trying to pull something on me without telling me. So you don't have to go to the Play Store to see if there's any changes to your apps or the app location sharing. You could just come here and view those things. And so as we can see, I don't have any such that has changed.
The developers of these apps provided info about their data sharing practices to an app store. They may update it over time. Data sharing practices may vary based on your app version, use, region, and age. 2 of 2.
And so, yeah, I don't have any apps that have changed, but that's something I just wanted to mention, that you can come in here and find apps that have changed their data sharing about location and all of that. And that's a neat thing to have in this beta 2. The other thing that is here in beta 2 is the fact that we now have a true separation between notification and the ringtone. It used to be very annoying because your ringtone, if you set the ringtone to 80%, the same thing is true of your notification. And, Samsung had it right and Google didn't have it right until now. And finally, we have the separation of those two volumes, and I'm glad to see that. Now that we've talked about this, let's talk about some of the fonts that qualify. We know that 10 fonts now, or 10 companies, or rather 10 fonts, I should say. Some companies have jumped onto opening up beta for their fonts. And so the following fonts are now qualified for Android 14 beta. And these would include the IQ. So it's a Chinese thing, IQOO 11, that qualifies for the Android 14. Lenovo Tab Extreme Wi-Fi qualifies for it as well. The Nothing Phone 1 also qualifies for that. If you remember the Nothing Phone, the one we dubbed as the Christmas tree phone, that qualifies for Android 14 beta. OnePlus 11 is one of those. Apple Fine N2 is one of those. Apple Fine N2 Flip is another one that qualifies for that. The Realme G22 Pro also qualifies for Android 14 beta. Techno, you guys know of a phone called Techno? I think I've heard it, but there's something called the Techno Camon, COMON 20 series. That also would support Android 14 beta. Vivo X90 Pro also qualifies. Then we have Xiaomi 12T, Xiaomi 13, Xiaomi 13 Pro, and Xiaomi Pad 6. So a lot of Xiaomi's here qualifying for that Android 14. We'll put the listing page in our show notes so you could check it to see if your phone is one of those that qualifies for this Android 14. So it's nice to see that we have early adapters, and Samsung is not on here for some reason. And even though rumors saying that they're starting UI 6 internal testing, so sounds to me like probably maybe next month or July, Samsung may start, a general beta for Android 14.